What verse did Suresh Lord do yesterday?
You did 20.
21, wasn't it?
21.
And I have for today 22.
Okay.
And what I'm seeing up there is not 22. Omaganatamandasya Dhananjana Sulakaya Chakshurmilitam Jaina Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jaina Bhutan Jadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Parakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Sri Rupam Sagra Jatam Sahagana Ragana Tanni Tantam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Paridam Sapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakapachuvascha Kripa Sindhu Vevacha Patitanam Bhavane Gyo Vaishnave Byo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudidayet Nasta Presho Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Shevaya Bhagavad Yuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki. Today is May 8th, 2025. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 28. King Paranjana becomes a woman in this next life. Hey, don't do that. This stupid thing. Every time. Text number 22. Evam kripanaya puja Sochantam atad arhanam Grahitum kritadhir enam Bhayanama vyapadjata Evam kripanaya puja Shochantam atalarhanam Grahitum akritadhir enam Mayanama vyapadjata Evam kripanaya puja Shochantam atadarhanam Grahitum kritadhirenam Mayanama vyapadjata Evam kripanaya puja Evam kripanaya puja Shochantam atadarhanam Grahitum kritadhir enam Mayanama vyapadjata Evam kripanaya puja Shochantam atadarhanam Grahitum kritadhirenam Mayanama vyapadjata Evam kripanaya puja Sochantam atadarhanam Krititam kritadhirenam Mayanama vyapadjata. The synonyms, evam, thus, kripanaya, by miserly, puja, intelligence. So chantam, lamenting. Atadarhanam, on which he should not have lamented. Rahitum, in order to arrest. Kritadhi, the determined king of the Yavanas. Enam, him. Bhayanama, whose name was fear. Abhyapadyata, came there immediately. Translation by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Although King Puranjana should not have lamented over the fate of his wife and children, he nonetheless did so due to his miserly intelligence. In the meantime, Yavanaraj, whose name was fear itself, immediately drew near to arrest him. Please repeat. Although King Puranjana should not have lamented over the fate of his wife and children, he nonetheless did so due to his miserly intelligence. In the meantime, Yavanaraj, whose name was fear itself, immediately drew near to arrest him. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Foolish people do not know that every individual soul is responsible for his own actions and reactions in life. That's a very profound statement. And the implications are vast and deep. As long as a living entity in the form of a child or boy is innocent, it is the duty of the father and mother to lead him into a proper understanding of the value of life. When a child is grown, it should be left up to him to execute the duties of life properly. The parent, after his death, cannot help his child. A father may leave some estate for his children's immediate help, but he should not be overly absorbed in thoughts of how his family will survive after his death. This is the disease of the conditioned soul. Not only does he commit sinful activities for his own sense gratification, but he accumulates great wealth to leave behind, so that his children may also gorgeously arrange for sense gratification. It was not my family. I was just grateful I didn't inherit any debt. In any case, everyone is afraid of death. And therefore death is called bhaya, or fear. Although King Puranjana was engaged in thinking of his wife and children, death did not wait for him. Death does not wait for any man. It will immediately carry out its duty. Since death must take away the living entity without hesitation, it is the ultimate God realization of the atheists, who spoil their lives thinking of country, society, and relatives, to the neglect of God consciousness. In this verse, the word atadarhanam is very significant, for it means that one should not be overly engaged in welfare activities for one's family members, countrymen, society, and community. None of these will help a person to advance spiritually. Unfortunately, in present-day society, so-called educated men have no idea what spiritual progress is. Although they have the opportunity in the human form of life to make spiritual progress, they remain misers. They use their lives improperly and simply waste them thinking about the material welfare of their relatives, countrymen, society, and so on. One's actual duty is to learn how to conquer death. Lord Krishna states the process of conquering death in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text 9. Janma karma cha me divyam evam yoviti tatvataha Taktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti sojana. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. After giving up this body, one who is fully Krishna conscious does not accept another material body, but returns home back to Godhead. Everyone should try to attain this perfection. Unfortunately, instead of doing so, people are absorbed in thoughts of society, friendship, love, and relatives. This Krishna consciousness movement, however, is educating people throughout the world and informing them how to conquer death. Harim vina namritim kavanti. One cannot conquer death without taking shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Wow. What a purport. Prabhupada hits another home run. In this section of Bhagavatam. Evam kripa naya puja shochantam atab arhanam grahitum kritadhir enam maya nama vyapadyata. Although King Paranjana should not have lamented over the fate of his wife and children, he nonetheless did so due to his miserly intelligence. In the meantime, Yavanaraj, whose name was fear itself, immediately drew near to arrest him. Mukum karoti bachalam pangam nagayate girim chakripa tamaham bande Sri Gurum Dhiratarinum Paramananda Madhavam. So I like this statement, that the first statement in the purport, that everyone is responsible for their own karma, their own actions and their own reactions in life. Not only in this life, but in previous lives. One's activities in the previous life bring one to the position one is in this life. So we may lament that, oh, someone is suffering, they're unfortunate, they're unlucky, but actually they're exactly where they're supposed to be, according to their actions and according to the reactions they get from those actions. So if someone is suffering excessively, we may feel sympathy, but know it for sure that that suffering is not just a random act of protons, electrons, and neutrons in an impersonal material world where nothing and nobody cares about anything, and everything is just a random movement of matter. That's the scientific view. I even heard one time on the radio, in some intellectual discussion of public radio, what's that guy's name? He's in charge of the museum and the science in New York. Neil deGrasse Tyson. Yeah. There was a call-in show, and someone was mentioning something about astrology and the planets, and he said the universe doesn't care about the planets and you, and everything is just random. You know, he's spewing this like foolish philosophy, and he is considered to be a very learned person. But actually, he's a demon. And he doesn't really know anything of value. He may know something about the molecules and this and that, but his view of the universe is based on atheism and foolish assumptions. And then one of the callers on that particular program mentioned something for somehow or other the point of smoking pot came up. And then he made some foolish comment like, yeah, everything is better that way. More proof. I mean, just dig a hole and jump into it. Just step right in it. And but because a fool may be very well dressed, but no matter how well dressed he may be, as soon as he opens his mouth, then his foolishness is revealed. As soon as he speaks. One of our God brothers was the first time he was given Bhagavatam class. And he was an extremely talented book distributor, one of the best. But he was not really a good speaker when it came to the Bhagavatam class. So the first thing he said, and he was a very sharp dresser too, very sharp dresser. The very first thing he said when he got up to speak, he says, well, no matter how well dressed one may be, he's revealed as a fool as soon as he opens his mouth. And that was his humble entreaty to begin his speaking of Bhagavatam. It was very entertaining, and he endeared himself to everyone in that way. And he had this quality of endearing himself to people. That's what made him such a fantastic book distributor. He had this quality that everyone loved him. But that was a nice point that he made. There was another devotee who was a very empowered distributor, a very big collector. And he was also a very good dresser. He always went out looking really good. And then I was selling paintings in the mall at Christmas, and he came to see me. He was actually working the mall, dodging the security. And then he made that point. I said, man, you are looking sharp. You're looking so good. And he says, yes, that is called a fop. A fop is someone who's very well dressed, but upstairs, nobody home. And he was humbly saying that about himself, but it actually wasn't true. It's also a great singer and a great mridanga player. When I was a bhakta, our traveling party was visiting the temple of Potomac. And the devotees there, for their Sankirtan spots, they used to sell flowers at the various monuments, like the Lincoln Monument, the Washington Monument, the White House. And they even took, we were just reading in the Memories from Rupanuga, in 1976, Prabhupada visited there. And so they wanted to take him to the different spots where the devotees were doing their collecting and show him the monuments. And then they went in front of the White House. Was that it? They went to the White House and they got out of the car and they were going to have a kirtan right there with Prabhupada, a little kirtan. And then the security stopped them. Said, no, you cannot have a public demonstration here. But later on, we used to go out with the Krishna Fest party in front of the Air and Space Museum, and we had a permit. We always had a permit. The permit would be good for 3 weeks, and you apply for another permit from the Parks Department and the National Parks Department. And they would give us the permits, and then, so we had a permit to do what was called a public demonstration, which in that case was Harinam. But they all had to get back in the car. So because the devotees were working these monuments, back in those days, the devotees used to go out on Sankirtan to the parking lots. Kmart was big, sometimes malls, and there was always these battles with security. So because the devotees in Potomac were not working the parking lots, they were just doing the monuments. So then the traveling party could visit and come and work their parking lots. That was okay because they didn't care. Go ahead, do whatever you want. And at that time, Rupanuga was the president there in Potomac. So we used to work the parking lots, and then the Potomac devotees would go out and do the monuments with the flowers, and they would do really big. They'd collect a lot of money. And when Prabhupada was there, they were showing him the different monuments, and then Prabhupada caught sight of the Capitol building, the United States Capitol building, where Congress meets. And he said, "Stop the car." And they got out and he looked at the dome, and he said, "This is the dome we want for our temple in Mayapur." Prabhupada was very keen to do things in a certain way. And of course, he wanted to build the temple of the Vedic planetarium in Mayapur. We just read about that, the temple that Bhaktivinoda Thakur envisioned from his room across the Jalangi from our ISKCON property in a place called Godundweep. There's the house, it's still there, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And up on the second floor veranda, you can look out across the Jalangi to the ISKCON Mayapur Chandrodaya Mandir, where now the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium, although not finished, stands quite prominently. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur had a vision of a great city arising there on the plains, the Gangetic plain. And perhaps some of you have visited Mayapur, been to Bhaktivinoda Thakur's house. I'll tell you one story. So in 1986, the 500th anniversary of the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it was a big festival in Mayapur. Of course, every festival now is bigger than that was then, but that was the big one. And devotees came from all over the world. And in our party from Philadelphia, we had at least 25 devotees went. And the thankless task of doing a lot of the management for that party and shopping fell to me. You chant Hare Krishna, you ask Krishna for service, he may give it to you. Be careful what you ask for, you may get it. And it was a lot of difficulty there in India. One of the most difficult things was devotees not cooperating, the devotees who were in our party. So they had arranged for these boats to come down the Jalangi and pick up the devotees and take them across the Jalangi to Godundweep, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's house, which was right there. So all these devotees were gathered there on the shore, waiting for the boats. And, it's India. The boats are not coming. Where are the boats? There are no boats. So I was standing there on the shore, and we were laughing, just laughing about India being, things are the way they are. They made this big arrangement. And there's, hundreds of devotees waiting, and there's no boat. And then this man came by in this little bitty tiny boat, like a fisherman or something, in this little bitty tiny boat, big enough for about 2 or 3 people. And so we called him over, and we waved some rupees. And so he came over, he saw the rupees, he came over, just a villager, very humble person. And we managed to squeeze 4 people besides him into that little boat. And we indicated, he didn't speak English, but we wanted to go across. So he took us across. Of course, with all those number of people in the boat, the whale of the boat and the level of the river were about the same. Maybe the level of the boat was a little below. So we crossed to the Jalangi, and then we looked back, and there was one big sannyasi who was in charge of Europe at that time, very tall, commanding person. And he was standing there looking at us angrily, and then all his followers were there right behind him. And then we were waving and smiling and laughing, and we got to go across the river because that little villager in his little boat. And the nice thing about it was there were hundreds of devotees were going to be on the parikram, but we got to go into Bhaktivinoda Thakur's house, just the four of us. And the old gentleman, the old Vaishnava who was the caretaker of the house, the pujari, he showed us around, and we went upstairs to Bhaktivinoda Thakur's room. And there were some interesting artifacts. There was one fan that ran on kerosene-powered fan. It wasn't running, but we all thought that was like super cool. He was like high tech for his time. You know, this had been around the turn of the 19th to the 20th century or before. And we looked out across the veranda at the ISKCON Mayapur property, and we experienced the vision of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. At that time, Prabhupada Samadhi was there, so that was the most prominent thing. But now, you know, it's completely different. There were no apartment buildings. It was just the long building and the original building, and Radha Madhava were in the temple room there. And there wasn't all the construction and all the place. Now it's like a whole city. It looks like, you know, a block of apartment buildings from someplace like Azerbaijan or the former Soviet Union. And Soviet Union in more ways than one, because a lot of those speculators and developers are Russians building those apartments. So I've heard. Anyway, it was a very inspirational moment to see from the veranda, that second floor bedroom of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, across the Jalanki and see the manifestation of Mayapur. Of course, that was 40 years ago, almost, and 39 years ago. But now it's like way more incredible, especially with the TOVP, which is this huge, giant temple. Wonderful. Adbhuta Mandir. It's what Bhaktivinoda Thakur saw in his vision, and that's what has manifest through the efforts of Srila Prabhupada. And we were reading just yesterday in that Prabhupada Nectar book, how Prabhupada said that Bhaktivinoda Thakur wanted to build that. He envisioned that Adbhuta Mandir in Mayapur, and Prabhupada said to the devotees who were distributing books, and you are the cornerstones of that temple. Very nice. So the vision of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and the determination of Srila Prabhupada and the surrender of the devotees, and this is all the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, how this is coming about. It's very wonderful. Adbhuta means wonderful. It's like we sing every morning, Adbhuta Sringham to Lord Nrsimha. He's Adbhuta, he's wonderful. I mean, what's more wonderful than like a half man, half lion, ripping out the guts of the demon Hiranyakashipu and then wearing the intestines around his neck like a flower, like a garland. And it's Adbhuta. Adbhuta doesn't just mean, oh, it's cool, but it just means it's a great cause of wonder that, wow, how can this even exist? So this Adbhuta Mandir, how can it even exist yet it is existing? And they're planning to open it in a few years. What's the plan? 2028 or so? Yeah, just keep pushing it back.
No, going there. That was open next year.
Sooner or later. They will, but they've come a long way. They're ahead of us as far as the construction of new temples goes. But at least we have the property, and we have the non-Adbhuta manifestation of Chris's stuff, paraphernalia, in the beautiful garden of weeds. But those can come in handy. I got some of those dried weeds, and our female pheasant laid 6 eggs. And I collected, the two more appeared just the other day, but I collected 4 of them and put them in a little depression in the ground and covered them with some of that straw, but I don't think she doesn't sit on them. Keep telling her, sit on those eggs. She doesn't listen, because they have to be set on to warm up enough to hatch. Maybe it's supposed to be 100 degrees on Sunday. Maybe that will help. So back to the purport. It is the duty of the parents to educate and guide the child in such a way that when the child attains the age of majority, then they take charge and responsibility of their own life and perform their duties properly in a responsible and sober way. In the Vedic culture, that is instilled in everyone. The parents know that is their responsibility, and they give very good guidance to their children to follow the rules of Dharma. And especially in the Vaishnava families, the children are educated to become devotees of the Lord and perform their devotional service nicely throughout their life. I just saw our old friend Mahatma Prabhu. He does these like self-help and therapeutic type seminars and things. And he's got one now he's doing for teenagers, children of devotees, and helping him do this course in presentation is his daughter, who I was there when she was born. She was born on Ram Navami sometime in the early 2000s, I believe it was. And so now she's in her 20s, and she's saying how these principles, this can be a lot of fun, and they made the point, it's not boring. The seminar's not boring. It's a lot of fun. And she said it can really help young devotees who are teenagers through their struggles and kind of cross beyond the difficulties of being a teenager. And she said it really helped me. And then she's a very well-spoken and very mature and very self-possessed young lady. She turned out to be quite the devotee. But given her parents, it's no surprise. But she was well-schooled and well taken care of and well-directed. They wanted to send her to the community college there in Alachua, and she wasn't really interested in that. She just wanted to go live in Vrindavan. She likes Vrindavan. She speaks enough Hindi to get by, and she grew up mostly in India. So she wasn't interested in material education. She was just interested in Krishna consciousness. And she's initiated devotee now and all that. Anyway, it was nice to see her, but I haven't seen her in a while. And I was struck by what a nice devotee she turned out to be, how really together and smart. And it wasn't by going to community college. It was by hanging out in Vrindavan, where she felt at home. That's very interesting. Of course, not every child is going to be like that, necessarily. Some people are just naturally attracted only to Krishna consciousness, and others are attracted to accomplishment in the world. And that's okay too. But we need plenty of accomplished people to be Krishna conscious, as an example to the rest of the world. So anyway, that was very nice to see. I just saw that yesterday, and I was really deeply impressed and moved. And she was born like our Ramachandra, Bhaktaraja's son, on Ram Navami. And then I told her mother, oh, so this child will grow up to be a great devotee of Lord Ram. And she said, I did not cultivate this child to be a devotee of Lord Ram. And therefore she was given the name at birth of Vraja Sundari. Vraj, Vrindavan. And that turns out to be her attachment, both to Vrindavan and Mayapur. So, that the mother told me specifically, no. It was like, oop, zip up my mouth on that one. You're chastised by the mother. You don't want to get the mother mad at you. So everyone should be trained according to the precepts of Vedic culture, how to perform their duties and execute their dharma nicely in life. And what to speak of Vaishnavas who practice Krishna consciousness from the beginning of life. And then it's nice when we see these young people grow up and become serious practitioners of sadhana and become initiated devotees and go on to perform devotional service within ISKCON. That's always a wonderful thing to see. It's not always the case with every young person, but it was always wonderful to see that. So Prabhupada is making the point, and in this verse especially, is making the point that King Paranjana, he was all attached to his wife and his children, and so he was thinking about, how to provide for them after he's gone. And like I said, that was something that didn't happen in my family. I didn't get one single thin dime. When my father passed away, he had some accumulated wealth, a little bit, not a lot, but some. But my parents had divorced when I was like 12, and then he immediately got remarried. So he'd been married to his wife for, 45 or something years, whatever it was, a long time. And so I wasn't upset that she got everything. I figured, well, she was married to him for all those years, so she deserved it. I would have liked to have got something, for sure, but, I wasn't attached. And my older brother, my stepmother gave him, my father was he retired in the rank of colonel, full chicken colonel, what they call it. There's a lieutenant colonel, and then the chicken colonel has the eagle. And they put the little insignia of the eagle there, and that's called a chicken colonel, because the eagle's a bird, it's chicken. So he was a chicken colonel in the Air Force, and so she gave to my brother the American flag that they presented it to him at the funeral. To her, and then his dress uniform from the Air Force. My father was kind of a big guy. That uniform, wouldn't fit anybody else in the family. I wouldn't mind having the jacket. When I was a teenager, it was cool to have during the era of the Vietnam War to have like used military clothing from the surplus store. I had one army jacket, a wool kind of jacket. It had the guy's name on it. It had the name on the uniform, the name on the pocket. That was fashionable then. But anyway, I didn't get the jacket, but neither it would have fit me either, because my father was a really big guy. So I didn't even get that. I didn't get anything. As a matter of fact, it cost me. I had to drive 300 miles to go to the funeral and drive back the same day. So it cost me, in gas and everything. That was like $60. And I did not stay. They had the memorial service in a military cemetery that somebody had donated, like 600 acres of land in the North Georgia mountains for this, veteran cemetery. It was a really beautiful place. And then everybody was to go back over to the house, and all kinds of boga and stuff, like they do at these things. And my brothers were all eager to go, and I was like, I have to get back. I have to go back. So I went back to the community of devotees and did not stay for the boga, the nasty boga. Hello, Nasteva, Nasteva, Steva, nasty, nasty, nasty. that verse, Harinam, 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 Eva Kevalam. So that is the only way in this age to attain perfection is Harinam, 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 Eva Kevalam. That's, there's no other method. And for emphasis, it's repeated, Harinam, 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 3 times. And then it says, Kalau, Nasyeva, Nasyeva, Nasyeva. So in this age of Kali, Nasyeva, 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 there is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way. Gatiranyata, to achieve the goal of going back home, back to Godhead, except through Harinam, through chanting of the holy names. And the Acharyas have explained that this Nasyeva, 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 Eva means certainly, and Nashti means there's certainly no other, Nashti, there's not another way. And the Acharyas have given us the meaning that I'm saying Nasyeva, Nasyeva, Nasyeva 3 times, not only for emphasis, but not by karma, not by jnana, and not by yoga, but by bhakti, by harinam. So not by fruitive activities, not by mental speculation, and not by impersonal or mystic yoga can one achieve perfection. Gatir. Nashyeva, certainly it is not possible. So, I was thinking of that boga they're eating at that house. It's nashti. Is it nashyeva, nashyeva, nashyeva? It will certainly destroy your bhakti. You eat that boga. Like that. Anyway, just a thought. So, Prabhupada says in the purport that one should not be overly absorbed in trying to make arrangements for one's family after death. And what is the value of that? It's foolishness. But he says that is the disease of the conditioned soul. That he's thinking, first of all, he's performing all these sinful activities in such a way as to arrange for his own sense gratification and getting all these reactions. But then he's going one step beyond. So, oh, let me do it for my family too, after I'm gone. Because of his absorption in meditating and thinking on his family, which is all just a big expansion of his own sense gratification, a foolish person, what happens to him in his next life? He becomes attached. Prabhupada says one may become so attached to the beautiful house that he's built that he may take birth in the next life as a cockroach in that house. Gee, what an inglorious destination that would be. What a tragedy that would be. You build a beautiful house and you're so attached to it, then your next life, you're a cockroach running around the house looking for scraps. Isn't that terrible? That is not the meaning, and that is not the value of this human form of life. Rather, one should live life in such a way that one is trained how to defeat death, Prabhupada says in the purport. And what is that formula for overcoming death, defeating death? And he gives Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text 9. Janma karma cha me divyam evam yoveti tatvataha chaktva deham purnar janma naiti mameti sarjuna. So, one who knows about his appearance and his transcendental activities, his pastimes, karma, jame divyam, Krishna's activities, which are completely transcendental, then knowing that in truth, chaktva deham purnar janma, one does not have to take another birth. Purnar janma, purna means again, and birth, purnar janma means birth. Chaktwadiham Purnarjana. You don't have to see another birth again. Naitimam eti sarjana. Rather, instead of that, you go to Krishna, you come to me. That means you go back home, back to Godhead. Well, nothing wrong with that, huh? Now you're talking. This is the real value of the human form of life, is that we can hear about Krishna and hear about this wonderful philosophy of Krishna consciousness, of which the Bhagavatam is the most glorious and amazing manifestation. And it's an expansion of Krishna, is that philosophy of self-realization. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has written in his Chaitanya Manjusa, which is a commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam, a wonderful verse that refers to this. That verse is Aradyo Bhagavan Rajasatanayas Tadhama Vrindavanam Ramya Kachid Upasana Brajabadu Vargena Vakalpita Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanam Amalam Prema Pumarto Mahan Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhur Matamidam Tatra Dharana Padaha. And this is a summary of the philosophy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna himself. And that states in the translation, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the son of Nanda Maharaj, is to be worshipped along with his transcendental abode, Vrindavan. So this is a key point of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's presentation of Krishna consciousness. Furthermore, the most pleasing form of worship for the Lord is that which is performed by the gopis of Vrindavan. Rajavadu, Vargena, Vakalpita. Ramya Kachid, Upasana. Ramya means most pleasing form of Upasana, worship, is that which the Vrajavadu, the damsels of Vrindavan, they exhibited how to love Krishna. And that is the highest form of worship. Another key point in the philosophy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Srimad Bhagavatam, Pramanam Amalam. I love this translation. Srimad Bhagavatam is the spotless authority on everything. So it's the supreme scripture. It's the supreme truth in the form of a book. Therefore, it's called Grantaraj. Grantaraj means the king of all books. It is the essential wisdom of Krishna consciousness in the form of a book. And Prema Pumarto Mahan, the ultimate goal of life for everyone, is to attain prema, pure love of God. And then he says, these statements for which we have the highest regard are the opinion of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Srimad Bhagavatam, Pramanam Amalam. This is the authority. If you want knowledge, transcendental knowledge, Srimad Bhagavatam is the actual authority. So therefore we take shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam by Prabhupada instituted the daily class on the Bhagavatam, because it is the authority which governs the principles which govern our existence. And otherwise people don't know this. What's that verse in the first canto? And let me think. Anarto Pashamam Shakshad Bhakti Yogam Hoksajay Lokasya Janato Vidvangs Chakre Sattva Samhitam. Thank you, Sureshwar Prabhu. You just earned your salary for the day. That Anarto Pashamam Shakshad, the material miseries which afflict us and of which we're tired of and very afraid of also, they're actually superfluous. And that Bhakti Yoga Madhoksajay, they are mitigated by the linking process of devotional service. However, lokasya janato vidvangs, that the people of the world, loka ajanata, they don't know anything about this. It escapes, everyone is not informed of this. Chakre Sattvata Samhitam. Therefore, Srila Vyasadeva compiled the Srimad Bhagavatam for the enlightenment of the world. And in this dark age of Kali, that people will get light in the darkness from the Bhagavat. So that is very wonderful appreciation of what Bhagavatam is. And Bhagavatam is glorious in so many ways that it presents a coherent, a consistent, and a unified philosophy which is based on Krishna Katha. And then the whole entire philosophy of Krishna consciousness expands from that Krishna Katha, including this very penetrating glance into what's going on with the conditioned souls in terms of their attachment and experiencing death and what happens in the next life, which is being presented to King Prachini Barhi by Sri Narada Muni, who is a real bhakti expert of the highest caliber. So we will stop here and ask for any questions, comments, or realizations. Yes, Divya.
So how does one become detached from this family life? Especially, we see like a lot of times, mothers become very attached to their children.
So you think the children should reciprocate? The mothers are very eager. That's actually what they're eagerest for, is the reciprocation.
Mm.
And Arjuna says, how's it possible to control the mind? And what does Krishna reply? Yes, it may seem very difficult. It is very difficult, but it is possible by constant practice or suitable practice and detachment. So one has to cultivate detachment. You give a little love, enough to, placate, but your heart belongs to Krishna and not your family. Your identity as a spirit soul is Achyuta Gocha, that you're a member of the family of Krishna. And this temporary family in which you appear, it's not very important. Is this family this life, another family this life? Like when the child of Srivas Thakur passed away during the kirtan, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was there, but he wouldn't stop the kirtan. He didn't say anything, and then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "What happened? Something has happened, I can tell." He said, "Yes, the child passed away." "Why didn't you tell me?" It's just like, this is a big thing. And then he brought the child back to life and said, "Oh, why have you left the home of your family?" So, "Who is my family?" The child began to speak. "Who's my mother? Who's my father? I've had so many lifetimes, so many mothers, so many fathers. Which one are you talking about? Which lifetime? Which mother? Which father?" There's some perspective for you. We're so caught up in this one little lifetime, and our ego is so attached to the false identity. "Oh, which mother, which father? Oh, my mother loves me so much. Oh, which mother was that? Which lifetime are we talking about?" But the spirit soul, his real love and affection is meant to be directed towards Krishna and Krishna's devotees. I don't know if that helps. And if it hurts, hey, welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam. where Srimad Bhagavatam cuts the attachment, cuts the hard knot of attachment with the sword of knowledge, hacking within our heart. Oh,
give up my attachment.
One comment on that. And Krishna says, or Shuddha Goswami says, Janiyat Yashuvai Ragyam Gyanam Jyadahaitukam. So if you do bhakti right, detachment develops naturally, right?
It comes, but the attachment comes as a result also of knowledge. So the more enlightened we are, the more knowledgeable we are, and the more detached we become. There was one Mataji, and her husband passed away. The devotee, the husband passed away, the Mataji lamenting, lamenting. And then another Mataji said, what are you lamenting for? Now you're free from that responsibility. You can concentrate on your Krishna consciousness. I mean, my husband's still alive. I got to put up with the problem, take care of it and stuff. You know, here you are. You're so fortunate that now you can just devote yourself completely to Krishna. And the woman was a devotee, but an Indian lady, and she was shocked to hear that from her god sister, fellow Indian lady, who was just, you know, piling on the self-realization. Here you go. Now's your chance to be detached. You should thank Krishna for giving you this opportunity. And you wanted to add something?
I was just going to say, you were talking about the TOVP, and I was just, you know, how glorious it is, and that, you know, when you know, it's like, it's a breathtaking thing. It doesn't, the pictures never do it justice. When you see the TOVP, it's going to be like a wonder of the world one day. You know, it's like a skyscraper.
It already is.
It's just so amazing.
Even in its incomplete state, it's adbhuta.
It's just a breathtaking experience, and it really makes you, you know, it makes you have this sense that this is where God would live. You know, if you were to go to, you know, if you were imagining where God lived as a kid or something, that would be, you know, it's like God's castle or God's palace. Is really amazing. Should that?
Yeah. Yeah, you have personal experience. Sufficient. Yes, search for.
In the third part, Prabhupada writes, you mentioned it too. A father may leave some estate for his children's immediate help, but he should not be, and for me, here's the key phrase, overly absorbed in thoughts of how his family will survive after his death. It's interesting that in the last month of his life, Srila Prabhupada told Tamal Krishna Maharaj
To provide for his family.
yes. He said, well, it's for his wife specifically, because his kids were grown, they could work. But for Radharani Day, that she should get a stipend. And she did until she passed away in the 80s.
Yeah.
So he was not overly attached to her, obviously.
He was not.
He walked out on his heels, you know, in 54 or 55.
Yeah, that's
But he
right.
was dutiful. So being detached doesn't mean we're irresponsible. And one more thing is that in the Items of Knowledge, chapter 13 in the Gita, where Krishna says, Vivikta desha sevatvam aditya janasam siddhi, which means detachment from children, wife, home, and the rest.
And the rest.
Items of knowledge. So what does Prabhupada do in the purport? In that, when he purports that line, those two lines, he talks about how to make the family Krishna conscious, and that's real detachment. And he mentions four things. You should take prasad together, you should have kirtan together, you should study scripture together. And there's one more thing I forget. Oh, worship the deity together.
None of which his wife was willing to do
Yeah.
in his household life.
And that's what he says after. He says, but if they're not favorable, if they won't cooperate, then they should be, he uses the A word, abandoned. And that's what he did. But first he talked to the reader about how you can make your home Krishna conscious. And that's real detachment, by everybody getting attached to Krishna.
Yes, we are not well known for being the propounders of family life as being the all in all, are we? Just the self-realization. It grates on the nerves of the materialists, and it brings enlightenment to the devotees. All right, Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavatam ki.
Also, you're like, West Bengal is a communist state in India.